This week we have already learned about diffusion and osmosis. But what we really want to get down to, understanding at least, is passive and active transport. And diffusion and osmosis are examples of passive transport. Passive transport is how particles are moved from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Basically, no energy is needed to move these particles through the cell. Now, this is very easy to remember. Just remember, passive is lazy, meaning no energy is required. Okay? So if you look to the right, you will see an image showing passive transport into and out of the cell. Passive transport requires no energy. Active transport. This is a little different. Active transport involves moving particles from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. Think of it as though you're at a concert and everyone is crowded up at the stage in order to see the coolest new band. Only you're short like me and you can't see unless you're in the front row. So you then have to squeeze through all of those people in order to see the concert. Well, that takes energy, or ATP. So it's going to take a lot of work. Oh, almost forgot. With passive transport, there's also this thing called facilitated diffusion, which is where you have these, well, they're kind of like proteins within the cellular membrane that help larger molecules enter in the cell. Smaller molecules can enter in without the assistance of these proteins, but sometimes they're needed for those larger molecules. I, on the other hand, would be a short, small molecule, so I would just squeeze right on through those people to get to the front of the concert. Anyway, active transport takes a lot of energy. I guess I would be active transport. Anyway. It takes energy, or ATP. Please remember that. It takes ATP to go from an area of low concentration to high concentration. It's going to take energy to move there. Now, you do have a few brain pops that you can complete that will help you understand active and passive transport a little better. There will also be a few videos to explain it in more depth with some animation. Protein transport. Oh, here we go. Facilitated. Proteins are embedded in the cell membrane, and these proteins are responsible for basically picking up these molecules from the outside or inside of the cell and helping to carry them across the membrane. This is used for molecules that are too large to move through the cellular membrane. Okay? And this usually occurs during active transport because it requires energy to open and close those proteins. Okay, now this next slide is something that we're not going to focus on the same day that we're talking about active and passive transport. But hey, why not just go ahead and learn about it now? Endocytosis and exocytosis. This is the process of moving large particles into and out of the cell. It is a process of active transport because during this process of active transport, a cell surrounds a large particle and encloses that particle in a vessel to bring the particle into the cell. I often think of amoebas when I think of endocytosis and exocytosis. Anyway, the first step with endocytosis, endo meaning in, you're taking something into the cell. Step 1, the cell comes into contact with a particle. Cell 2, the cell membrane begins to wrap around the particle. Step 3, once the particle is completely surrounded, a vesicle pinches off. And last but not least, this photo shows the end of endocytosis, which means within the cell. Remember, endo, in. Okay, exocytosis. Remember exo, exit. Exit. This is the process in which a cell releases a particle by enclosing the particle in a vesicle that moves to the cell surface and fuses with the cell membrane. Step 1. Large particles that must leave the cell are packaged in vesicles. The vesicle travels to the cell membrane and fuses with it. The cell then releases the particle to the outside of the cell. And as we said before, exocytosis means outside the cell. Remember, endo, in, exo, out. Okay, I hope you guys have a wonderful day.